Hey everyone, welcome to another hardware news recap of the week. We are doing some groundwork, so we're out talking to a bunch of companies about tariffs. That'll be a separate special feature piece. We'll talk about some of it here though. In addition, the tariffs are changing day in, day out. As far as actual hardware specific news, although that is heavily affecting it, some AI GPUs have been unbanned in China. The Nintendo Switch 2 was announced along with a lot of games. The AMD Radeon GPU series continuing to get some rumors and announcements coming up. So that includes the 9060 series and a rumored 9070 GRE or Golden Rabbit edition in the news. Also Valve hardware rumors and plenty more to talk about for this week. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Montech Hyperflow series of liquid coolers. The Montech Hyperflow aims to compete with other affordable liquid coolers by fighting on price to performance. In our testing, cooler performance was comparable to others in its class. The ARGB Hyperflow has an illuminated pump block with RGB LED fans that have quality rubber bumpers for vibration damping. The cooler has a 6-year warranty and supports all modern Intel and AMD sockets, and you can learn more at the link in the description below. All right, so why we are out here. Currently, we are in Southern California. We're gonna drive up to San Francisco. We're flying over to Austin, and we don't have a return flight yet. That is part of the big adventure that Vitalii and I are on right now. What we're trying to do is talk to as many hardware companies as want to talk to us right now. And what we're trying to learn is apolitically, to the extent possible, how are the tariffs affecting them, but more importantly, how does that then affect consumers? So that's what we're on the ground to gather information for. A lot of people actually are willing to go on camera for this, which is kind of crazy. And so currently we've got Corsair, Iowa Cyberpower, Height, and a couple of other companies. Louis Rossmann will hopefully be joining us as well if the timing works out for that. So that's what's going on. The backstory is, I booked a one-way ticket out here. We don't have a return flight yet. We don't know when we're going back. We have a rental car with no return date. And we're just gonna figure out what happens and go day by day and talk to people. And that'll be kind of the fun. But this is a very expensive adventure. And so we are launching on store.gamersnexus.net this t-shirt, which is the paper launch GPU t-shirt. It really can't be any more on the nose. I don't know that I need to. It's a 50 series card going into a shredder, and then there's paper coming out. So anyway, this is on the store. Andrew on our team worked with artwork that we bought from a viewer and a new contract artist we're working with, Glai, who did an awesome job on this to make the artwork. So you can buy this on the store. The t-shirts are printed in Vermont in the US with water-based inks. And then as for the big adventure to learn about tariffs and the impact just as quickly as possible, we're not experts in that stuff. Big surprise, global trade, kind of over my head. And so we're coming out here to just try and pick up what we can from people who also, in a lot of cases, it's over their heads too. They're just going day by day to try and understand and adjust on the fly. And so it'll be interesting. This is a story about getting the story is really how it's coming together. But here's a teaser trailer that we've put together for you to show you what's coming up soon on the channel. Here's the deal. We wanted to put together an ultra polished, well-researched video about tariffs and the impact on consumer electronics and the companies that make stuff in our space. But what we've learned is that this is basically impossible. First of all, because I don't know shit about fuck. And secondly, because nobody else does either. What do you think is the biggest problem or challenge with how these tariffs are being rolled out?
Forecasts change. The entire dynamic doing business changes on, it changes on a daily basis.
But this time the problem is, with it changing constantly, everybody's wondering like, oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? The truth is, today there are orders that are sitting in our system right now that people have paid for. But tomorrow, when we get the parts, we will maybe be paying more. We're going to be shipping it regardless at a loss. Yes. So how do we make up for that? Well, our cost average has to go up, then we adjust and we hope that things balance out. But if it keeps changing, then we have no idea when this will resolve itself or normalize.
And we are losing money on every one we sell.
So how much are you losing right now if you sell one of these at $140?
I would lose $91.26.
Jesus Christ.
For a Y40.
Fuck. Oh man.
But the real frustrating part of this situation is that margin is calculated based on the MSRP. So if we increase our MSRP to cover our tariff costs, the retailers make more money and we make less money. So the retailers, this is a wholly profitable situation for the retailers where they can't possibly lose money.
April 14th, so it's Monday now. So several days into the trip, we're gonna check in with Corsair CEO. What do you think are the biggest tariffs-related misconceptions in the general public that you've seen lately?
Well, I mean, look, you see on the news as well as I do, you know, I think when all this started, most people sort of had this assumption that China was going to pay the tariffs. It's the American consumers that end up paying tariffs, essentially, when the prices roll through.
So again, this story is about getting the story, and in that way it's unique. The story's changing so much, and we know so little about international trade, big surprise, that we decided to go and talk to all the people and put it together. It's going to be a crazy video. Full transparency, currently the thing I find most challenging about trying to put it all together is that because GN is remaining apolitical and focusing on just sort of the numbers, so we actually got access to margin numbers from some of these companies. When we're trying to look at how it affects hardware companies and pricing for consumers, we're basically trying to figure out how to balance on sort of that line of it's educational, but not from a place of experts this time. And that's sort of different because normally we try to at least be as close to an expert as possible on something. And so it's a little interesting. Now, I personally have no kind of desire to comment politically on that side of things, but there's no debate that the way the tariffs are being implemented, the line for where does it become political is different for different people. And so we're basically going to ask you all to kind of work with us and just understand in good faith. We're trying to present it as we get the information and strip out all that sort of behind the scenes stuff from it and then just run it as the impact. Now, what the companies say, we're not going to censor it, so we'll see what they all say on camera, but we're really just out here to learn and listen. And then separately, I've been working with our new team member, Ben Benson, on all this, and he's working with Jimmy. Jimmy does the article conversions for the site and writes these episodes, including this one. And he and Jimmy have been helping with the tariffs research and sort of the timelining of it all, because it's day-to-day changes. And we just hired Ben. You may recognize his name from our Intel fabrication factory tour in Arizona last year. Ben's the guy who made that all possible. And actually, we published that fab tour on his last day at Intel. That sounds bad. It wasn't because of that. It was totally unrelated, I promise. Back when Intel announced its layoffs of 15 to 20,000 people, we mentioned that our contact and guy with the awesome name, Ben Benson, had departed the company. We threw a lifesaver out to the sea of layoffs and he grabbed it. For GN, he'll be heading up the direction of our RMA Rescue series where we buy defective parts from viewers, which will be published on the GNCA channel that we'll link below. He's also helping us do warranty service undercover testing so we can do more of that, similar to what we did with the Asus Ally previously. And also mostly for GNCA, he's helping to write basically a hardware news series equivalent for that channel that'll focus on consumer rights, right to repair progress, and other similar issues. Ben has a lot of specific research skills that we're going to be utilizing for stories like looking at RMA service requests and going undercover for that, consumer advocacy content, and doing the RMA testing. Because he used to work for Intel, to isolate for bias, he will not be reviewing CPUs or covering any Intel-related topics for the foreseeable future, and actually just for CPUs. I'm currently the one who reviews them in the writing anyway. But he'll mostly be heading up the GNCA RMA rescue content, tips filtering, and news for GNCA. Anything that is related to his prior employment is going to go through me or someone else on the team. Basically, he's joining me to manage a lot of our consumer advocacy content. So the new stuff we're doing and that sort of new direction as we continue to seriously expand towards it, we're really excited about that. But anyway, the big thing we're working on now is this tariff story out here. It's going to be a hell of a story because we get to see all the different characters in the industry, and there are some really interesting characters talking about this stuff. So anyway, if you want to grab the shirt, you can go to store.gamersaccess.net. That directly supports this type of on-the-ground reporting where we pay for all of our own travel and everything else. And to get into the news, to start off on a bit of good news this time, so NVIDIA recently took measures to make PhysX and its Flow GPU accelerated solutions as open source code available online now, so it's a big change for them. The company had previously made its PhysX SDK open source, but what it didn't do was actually release its GPU simulation kernel, which it's held close to the vest. That's changed now with NVIDIA engineer Adam Morvansky taking to GitHub to write, quote, since the release of PhysX SDK 4.0 in December 2018, NVIDIA PhysX has been available as open source under the BSD3 license, with one key exception: the GPU simulation kernel source code was not included. That changes today, he said. We're excited to share that the latest update to the PhysX SDK now includes all the GPU source code fully licensed under BSD3, end quote. Morvansky added, quote, we hope this release will be a valuable resource for learning, experimentation, and development across the community. In addition, we're also open sourcing the full GPU compute shader implementation of the Flow SDK, our real-time sparse grid-based fluid simulation library, end quote. Now, we recently at GN criticized the fact that NVIDIA killed 32-bit CUDA support with its GPUs, which impacted PhysX 32-bit support, and by impacted we mean broke it. That was on the company's newer cards specifically. You should check that video out if you haven't seen it, and we'll put some B-roll on the screen of games absolutely struggling on 50 series cards. And that was the one where we had the 5080 versus the GTX 580. So if you missed it, it's a fun one to watch. What we're going to be interested in seeing is if the open source community is able to do anything with this release that we might not have otherwise expected, maybe improve compatibility, maybe add it to other games. We're not really sure where they're going to go with it, but we'll be paying attention to it if anything major comes out of that. Up next, this was found via video cards, which itself found it via IT Home, which found it via benchlife.info. And yes, we are self-aware here of the media and news centipede. It's all sort of, if you think about it too much, it's not pleasant. GRE is the name of the series that AMD originally began shipping into the China market, and then later some of those came over to the US. So we saw that with the 7900 GRE, and now we're looking at the potential 9070 GRE. The rumored video card is purported to have a 12 gigabyte frame buffer and a 192-bit bus, which is 4 gigabytes lower than the 16 gigabyte capacity of the 9070 XT, and on a smaller bus than the 256-bit 9070 XT card. The 9070 non-XT is also a 16 gigabyte capacity and a 256-bit bus, making the alleged 9070 GRE the first sort of, we'll call it, cut down of AMD's new GPUs. There's really not much more to it than that right now, other than BenchLife said that some of the AIB partners informed BenchLife that those AIB partners are ready to go into mass production for the 9070 GRE, or at least the rumored one. Up next, some rumors about Valve products. According to Sadly It's Bradley, Valve has ordered some new VR gaskets. This lends some credence to the rumors that the company is working on a new VR headset codenamed Deckard. Along with what appears to be an image of a shipping manifest, the hardware leaker tweeted, quote, "Valve has been importing equipment to manufacture VR headset facial interfaces inside the USA. The equipment is being provided by Teleray Group, who also manufactured the gaskets for the Valve Index and the HP G2 Omnicept," end quote. As reported on before, the Deckard here is rumored to be Valve's upcoming $1,200 standalone VR headset. We've got that in a previous hardware news episode. That was also just a rumor though, and it was from the same source. Additionally, AMD already has confirmed its RX 9060 series. It did that back when it announced the 9070 and the 9070 XT series GPUs. So we know that the 9060 is a thing, but it hadn't given any additional information, and it still hasn't, at least at the time we're filming this. But there are some new rumors. So hardware leaker at Harukazi5719 spotted some 9060 XT listings on the Korean Radio Research Agency website. Based on these supposed leaks, there'll be 2 gigabyte models, not like 2 gigabytes of memory, but 2 models from Gigabyte, one with 16 gigabytes of VRAM and another with 8 gigabytes. That's not confusing to read at all. There's no release date, but in terms of specs, Video Cards reports that it's expected to feature a 20 gigabit per second memory clock, a 128-bit memory bus, and memory bandwidth amounting to 320 gigabytes per second. As for availability, our more formal announcement at launch, we'd expect that to align with May, possibly for Computex, or maybe just more of the 5060s, which are rumored to be out in that timeline as well, at least as of the time we're filming this. Now, up next, after numerous announcements, Nintendo has finally announced the Switch 2 and its specs in its announcement. I think that's accurate with the recursive announcements. So this was done via its Nintendo Direct live stream, and in short, the console launches on June 5th, 2025. It'll start at $450. There's also a $500 edition with Mario Kart World. Getting into some of the Switch 2's design, Nintendo showed off its Joy-Con 2 controllers, which have a new C button, and tie into the console's new game chat functionality with the system having built-in microphones. The company showed off the new microphone in action up close in handheld mode and from a distance in docked mode. Users can also share footage of the games that they're playing. This feature sounds like it mimics Steam broadcasting, but the footage in Nintendo's presentation to us, it looked pretty choppy at the time. The company said that an online subscription will be required to use game chat, but Nintendo will be making the service free until March 31st of 2026. Nintendo also revealed the Switch 2 camera, which is a separate $50 peripheral that plugs into the console via USB-C cable. Some games, like Super Mario Party Jamboree, will take advantage of this and do things like show player faces on screen during mini-games. The company also revealed its game share feature, which allows users to share a copy of supported games with up to 3 other people at the same time for multiplayer. Nintendo Switch 2 players can also share copies of the game with original Switch owners. In terms of its screen, the Switch 2 uses a 7.9-inch 1080p display, it's LCD, that supports HDR and 120Hz refresh rates. Nintendo claims it's the same 13.9mm thickness as its predecessor. The new Joy-Con 2s attach to the Switch via magnets and use a button release. They also have larger control sticks and larger SL and SR buttons, which are the Joy-Con's shoulder buttons when oriented sideways, plus support as a mouse. A second pair of controllers will be a hefty $90 pending tariff changes. The Switch 2 has a new U-shaped stand, which the company advertises as providing a, quote, freely adjustable viewing angle. The console has 2 USB-C ports and 256 gigabytes of internal storage. The older dock was basically an empty plastic shell when we tore it down many years ago. It was pretty disappointing actually how little was in there, but Nintendo is adding a fan to the new dock. The device supports 4K resolution and HDR and compatible games while docked, Nintendo said, and Nintendo noted that playing at 4K will limit frame rate to 60 FPS. The company also confirmed that the Switch 2 will also be able to play OG Switch games, both in digital and physical formats. The game cartridges, or game cards as Nintendo likes to call them, are the same size and shape, but the company says that the Switch 2 cards have faster data read speeds. Nintendo also revealed, though, that the Switch 2 will only support microSD express cards and that regular microSD cards are no longer compatible with the upcoming console. Part of the changes they're making here into the software and how it loads might be to do with better piracy prevention. The company also said that users can transfer their saved game and game data from original Switches to the Switch 2 via Nintendo's account system. Nintendo also revealed the new Switch 2 Pro controller, which has the new C button that can launch game chat. Unlike the previous Switch Pro controller, it also has 2 grip buttons on the back and an audio jack at the bottom. To highlight more of the Nintendo Switch 2's design, the company will release a game called Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour to, they say, basically put a focus on the technical details. The game looks to serve a similar purpose to Astro's Playroom for the PS5, with the exception that it will not be free. It's going to cost 990 Japanese yen, or about maybe $6 to $7 US. In terms of game support, there will be Switch 2 exclusives as well as Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, they call them, which are so-called enhanced games available on the OG Switch that will, unfortunately, come at a premium. The company also revealed that if you own a copy of the original game, you can pay an additional $10 to have the privilege of upgrading to the Switch 2 version, so it won't just work for free. Announced Switch 2 enhanced games include Super Mario Party Jamboree, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Pokemon Legends Z to A, and most titles will receive enhanced resolution and frame rates, they say, and some will include new Switch 2 content exclusively. Nintendo also announced Drag X Drive, which is a basketball game where players will have to use their Joy-Con 2s in mouse mode to spin the virtual wheels to move. Players will also have to lift up their controllers to chuck the basketballs into the net. First-party titles include Mario Kart World, Kirby Air Riders, and Donkey Kong Bonanza. The company also revealed steep price hikes for its first-party games. For instance, Mario Kart World will retail for $80, and Donkey Kong will retail for $70. We're actually going to talk about this specifically in our upcoming GNCA news equivalent episode, which has a name, but we're not going to reveal it yet. So you'll find that on GNCA sometime within the next week or so. We'll put a list of third-party games on the screen briefly here. If you want to see them all, you can pause. But the highlight third-party game reveal seems to be the Duskbloods, which is Nintendo's Switch 2 exclusive from the Elden Ring developer From Software. Switch 2 owners who have a subscription to Nintendo Switch Online, coupled with the expansion pack tier, will also be able to play GameCube games. The company showed off Wind Waker, Soul Calibur 2, and F-Zero GX. A wireless GameCube controller also includes a C button for game chat support. Following Nintendo's reveal of the Switch 2, NVIDIA jumped on the hype train, I guess, to post on its blog with some additional details on the console's SoC. NVIDIA's providing the processing solution to the Switch 2, just like it did for the Switch previously. NVIDIA wrote that the Switch 2 is, quote, powered by a custom NVIDIA processor featuring an NVIDIA GPU with dedicated RT cores and Tensor cores, end quote. The company claims that, quote, over 1,000 engineer years of effort, end quote, were required. And as we all know, engineer years take 20% more time than normal years. It's a joke. Try not to get too offended, engineers in the audience. NVIDIA says its time was spent across, quote, system and chip design to a custom GPU, APIs, and world-class development tools, end quote. One quick note here, NVIDIA's so-called custom GPU last time wasn't that custom, so we'll see if that's the case here. NVIDIA also confirmed that the Switch 2 uses, quote, AI upscaling to sharpen visuals and smooth gameplay, end quote, and this may relate back to that 4K 60 comment earlier. In addition, the company stated that the Switch 2's RT cores enable real-time ray tracing and that the Tensor cores enable, quote, AI-driven features like deep learning super sampling, along with enabling, quote, AI-powered face tracking and background removal in video chat use cases. NVIDIA also claims that the Switch 2 offers, quote, 10x the graphics performance of the Nintendo Switch, end quote, which uses NVIDIA's Tegra X1 SoC, and we're not sure what they mean when they say 10x more, so we'll kind of see how it all performs and looks once it comes out. But the Switch 2 also supports variable refresh rate, and this is done via NVIDIA's G-Sync, and NVIDIA said that's in the handheld mode. Up next, Switch 2 pre-orders might be delayed, or maybe they won't be. Nobody knows, because the situation is constantly changing. So for our final Switch 2 related story, but related to some of the tariff stories we're getting into that I've pushed as far into the episode as possible, Nintendo revealed, mostly because it's changing constantly, but Nintendo revealed that it has pushed the Switch 2 pre-order date back in the US. It was originally supposed to be April 9th. We're past that date now, and it's going to be a to-be-determined date at the time we're filming this due to the recent US tariffs, Nintendo says. Now, that was before the new exemptions were announced, which at the time we're filming this were like maybe 10 hours ago. So that may change. I don't know. Maybe there's news out there about Nintendo announcing a firm date now. We're not going to update this episode if so, because it's like every day there's a change. So you can check if you want to check. But that is the most recent information as of Saturday morning, basically. Obviously, we have no idea if Nintendo or the US government will change stances. Nintendo told Polygon, quote, pre-orders for the Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start April 9th, 2025 in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions. Nintendo will update timing at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is unchanged, end quote. In addition to the pre-order delay, the proposed widespread tariffs could potentially drive up the cost of console hardware, with Polygon reporting that China and Vietnam, two countries that are producing Switch 2 consoles, have been hit with new 34% and 46% tariffs, respectively. But that, oh wait, I'm getting a transmission. I'm hearing that those tariffs are paused for 90 days now. Oh wait, I'm getting another one. 104%, it's 104%. 104. Do I have 105? 105. We have 105. 125. Do I have 125? We have 125, folks. 135. Do I have 135? 145. We have 145. 160. Can I get 160? 170%? 170%? Sold. Feel free to change your bid at any time. We're just pointing out the absurdity of the rapidity of the changes, folks. Anyway, according to IGN, the change in pre-order date only affects the US, with the outlet writing, quote, Nintendo has confirmed the pre-order delay is specific to the US. In the UK, for example, Nintendo's pre-order delay remains unchanged, end quote. Wait, we got another one. Mobile Syrup is now reporting that the pre-orders to Canada are also indefinitely delayed. Nintendo communicated to the publication, quote, pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in Canada will not start on April 9th, 2025 in order to align with the timing of pre-orders to be determined in the US, end quote. Kind of hard to report on the news when it keeps changing this much. It takes us a little bit longer than a day. It's been actually day-to-day changes. So whatever you think, good or bad, whatever, as far as our job, reporting on it, it's difficult to have. I don't know, when we publish this, we'll see what all this stuff is. All of that, though, brings us to the clusterfuck of the week, which is what we can't keep up with, and that is how the hardware industry is reacting to the tariff changes, and specifically the unpredictability of them. And we're going to give you the information as best we can here, again, as apolitically as possible, as up to date as, what's today, Vitalii? April 12th. April 12th. He didn't know either. It's all good. We are very organized here. So on April 8th, White House correspondent Edward Lawrence tweeted, quote, White House press secretary says 104% additional tariffs went into effect at noon Eastern time because China has not removed its retaliation. Sick there for the apostrophe. The 104% additional tariff will be collected starting tomorrow, April 9th, end quote. In response, on April 9th, China reportedly said that it would raise its retaliatory tariffs on U.S. manufactured products from 34% to a reported 84%. Later that day, the US responded by raising tariffs on China to 125% for the blanket tariff. It then more recently raised tariffs to 145%. As we're writing the story, China responded by placing a 125% tariff on US imported products. And we'll have a lot of this in our special report coming up, but the super basics that you need to know is that the tariff is paid by the company importing the goods, so they are unloaded from the ship, normally in a container. The company that brought them in pays that tariff to the US government, and then the percentage is, there are exemptions where some things have 0, and then there are also certain classifications or categories where some items get a different percentage than others. Often those are lower than the blanket tariff, at least right now. But again, we'll cover that in our special feature coming up. We have actually a freight forwarder and some experts in logistics who are going to be talking about that stuff. Now, as those last two changes that we read off were happening, so the 125% increase and the China response, we woke up to even more news. So we basically, when those were happening, April 10th, on like 14 hours of notice, that's when I booked a one-way flight to LA and started arranging meetings with companies that were willing to go on camera, which is actually a lot of them, so that's going to be great because we get some really interesting discussion from people. So the announcement that we woke up to is that there are now some exemptions. This includes some computer components and pre-built computers, such as pre-built, and we'll talk about that more in the upcoming piece. But because the tariff situation is confusing and changing hour by hour, and sometimes minute by minute, we have prepared this extremely well-informed infographic. Here it is. This explains the situation. A lot of money and time went into this, so feel free to pause your screen and take all the data in. Now, assuming the tariffs between China and the US stay the course or stay the same, what all this really means from our perspective, reporting for consumers, is that whatever you think on if they should or shouldn't be there, the end result is that the pricing for consumer hardware, that's going to increase likely in both countries. And then additionally, we are aware of several manufacturers that are diverting supply to different countries than the US. So that'll affect the US market, specifically the availability of hardware. So some of the ones we spoke to have enough sort of power in their negotiations to say, keep the container on the ship, send it out from LA or wherever it is, and around to some other countries. So we're hearing the UK for a lot of it, or other just regions like Europe is getting a lot of these diverted shipments as well. And so now those companies are looking to grow their customer base in the countries or regions where they're diverting the supply. So that's kind of the news that we have right now. This is all very interesting because with the exemptions applied, some of them might not have chosen to make that decision, but because the decision was already made, the ship is already out at sea and choosing a different port, it's not something that can really be reversed unless they're then going to reverse it again and ship it back. So some of these we're going to see sort of that knock-on effect where it'll take a few months to really see what happens to the supply, the availability of hardware in the market. Now, speaking of this, some of Razer's devices are currently in a state of limbo. So The Verge reported that the company's laptops, which include its upcoming Blade 16 notebook, are either no longer for sale or no longer up for pre-order in the US. The publication noted that the Blade 16 pre-order page was taken offline, and it now leads to an error 404 page after having previously been up before the recent tariff announcements. The publication contacted Razer, and Razer's public relations manager simply replied, quote, "We do not have a comment at this stage regarding tariffs," end quote. Regardless, even the company's new laptop stand has seemingly been affected, as the company's press release stated that the product is supposed to be, quote, "available now," end quote, but currently only has a notify me button on its US product page. Looking at Razer's Canadian site, however, you can see that it is available and it's for about $100 Canadian. According to Reuters, Micron has stated that it will increase the price of its memory to US-based customers due to tariffs. The publication wrote that the company's manufacturing is, quote, "largely based in Asia, including China, Taiwan, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore," end quote. This is expected to have downstream effects on pricing and availability of memory modules and SSDs. Framework is another company whose products have been affected by the tariffs. The company sent us an email promoting its upcoming laptop 12 pre-orders, but also stated, quote, "As a result of the new tariffs that came into effect today, we have a series of unfortunate price and availability adjustments we need to make for US customers. We manufacture most of our products in Taiwan, for which we now face a new 32% import tariff into the US. We're absorbing part of this cost temporarily, and we are increasing prices on in-stock laptops and new system pre-orders by approximately 10% for US customers. For our lowest priced configurations, where we can't absorb the tariffs, we're currently pausing sale to the US. We're also delaying the pre-order launch of the laptop 12 in the US. We're continuing to monitor changes to tariffs and will make additional adjustments if needed," end quote. Now, there's a chance that the tariff situation is different by the time I read this sentence. What's that? Pre-orders are back on the table. Framework sent us an updated email that reads, quote, Framework Laptop 12 pre-orders are now open for US customers, end quote. Height has told us that it stopped shipping to the US. It actually also shared its margin structure with us with several products, which is insane levels of access, insight, transparency. So shows a little bit of maybe a desperation with the situation of trying to be that open with things. It is extremely rare to get that information. So we're going to share that with you in our special feature coming up. But they have said that they've halted shipments into the US. That was as of 6 hours ago. We're going to talk to them a little more the rest of this weekend and figure out if that's changed. But some of these decisions for shipments, again, have already been made, so they're already moving. Now, additionally, Asus is rumored to be diverting supply to other regions as well, or sending things back. And the Entertainment Software Association has voiced its opposition to U.S. tariffs. The ESA, which is an organization that represents many large gaming companies like Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, and more, has penned a letter to the U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer, which stated, quote, we stand behind the president's interest in open and fair markets for the U.S. exports. However, U.S. tariffs on imports of critical technology inputs and products would harm the very U.S. businesses the president seeks to boost and would risk undercutting long-term U.S. technology leadership, end quote. Again, that's the ESA's words, not ours. We're just kind of presenting what they're saying here. Now, in our on-the-ground reporting, we've mostly heard complaints from the companies about the stability, the unpredictability, or the consistency of the changes. So that's the big story that they've been talking about, where it's making decisions day by day for things that are projecting 6 months into the future, and so they're having difficulties dealing with that, they tell us. Now up next, according to NPR, the US government was previously planning to block NVIDIA from exporting its H20 HGX GPUs to China, but that plan has now been dissolved following dinner between the U.S. president and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, which reportedly cost $1 million per head.
$1 million.
According to NPR, the H20 is, quote, the most cutting-edge AI chip U.S. companies can legally sell to China, end quote. And it's used by Chinese AI company DeepSeek, which made the rounds in the headlines back in January for posing stiff competition against the likes of OpenAI, Meta, and Google in the AI space. NPR writes that, quote, the planned American export controls on the H20 had been in the works for months, and that a ban was to be done as early as this week. And then NVIDIA has also said that it's going to prioritize, sorry, I had to check my notes here to make sure I got the name right. AI. That's a new one. I haven't heard that before.
AI. 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 AI.
Data centers into the US. So that's it for this hardware news. There's a lot going on right now. We're doing our best to put it together. You know, this stuff, it directly affects sort of the consumer hardware, the pricing. So it makes our jobs a little difficult for reviews for one specific reason, which is that we are very value focused on the reviews, and the MSRPs are already fake. Not that many cards were hitting them to begin with from any of the companies. And part of that's because everybody's trying to increase the price of things. They're selling these board partner models, charging ridiculous amounts for them. So they were already not really reality for a lot of people. Now there are cards, we talked about this in our fake MSRPs video, and in the same type of video for NVIDIA with pay per launch. But now we have an additional situation, which is that because of the tariffs coming in, there's going to be kind of a few things going on where some of the companies will be increasing the prices out of a legitimate need. Some of them will be increasing the prices and adding extra on top, using it as a smokescreen. And then others will maybe be trying to move the goods somewhere else, and so they just don't even go to, in this case, the US or wherever it may be. So this for us is a little more difficult to report on some of this stuff because, again, that line for people is different of where do they feel it becomes political, and we are genuinely trying to keep it on just reporting the facts. So hopefully for everyone that's working out, and it is going to directly affect the pricing and sort of the consumer purchasing experience. So from our side of things on reviews, I'm just not sure what the plan is for upcoming GPUs and things when we evaluate the value, because we don't know the street price ahead of when the review gets published. So we work on the review, we publish it, and then normally the next day the product launches. And we might just have to gauge the value after it publishes and focus the review on only the performance. Or maybe what I'll do is stage a couple of different price possibilities or something. And in that case, what we do is a sliding scale of value of if this GPU is Y price, then here's what we think. If it's X price, here's what we think, and so forth, and do that for a bunch of different prices that maybe seem realistic. That's probably the best way to handle it. It's going to be a longer conclusion, but I don't know. If you have ideas, let us know. But we're just trying to provide the best consumer purchasing advice we can, and that is difficult if we don't know, again, because of fake MSRPs or whatever else, difficult if we don't know what it's going to cost at the end of the day. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab our paper launch t-shirt. It's on the store, and that price, that is stable. And again, these are printed in Vermont. They are sourced from normally a couple different companies, so Bella and Canvas being one of them, Next Level, and they make their stuff in other countries. The printing is done through actually a printer that Paul from Paul's Hardware introduced me to many years ago, and he does an awesome job in his Vermont-based facility. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.